Ready to get outside and develop some cyanotypes? Yeah, me too. You can make prints of natural objects, found objects from around the house, or even develop your own photographs with these. They're extremely cool, and it's a very simple process. Let's go do some cyanotype. To get started, you'll need your cyanotype solution. You can get this in a part A, part B situation where you mix the two together, apply it to the surface that you want to print on, let that dry in the dark, and then you're ready to expose. Or you can get pre-treated sheets or even mural-sized fabric. I like to start with using a board to assemble my composition. I then put my paper or fabric down, negative and objects on top. I like to assemble these as a test run in my studio first, so that once everything gets in the sun, it's pretty quick and easy to assemble the composition that I'm looking for when I get outside. If the wind's blowing, you may want to anchor your objects. A piece of glass is optimal, but make sure that it doesn't have any UV protectors in it. So don't break out the glass in your fancy frame. Use a cheap frame for something like this. And now we wait. Exposure times can vary depending on how intense the sun is. Today is just a little bit cloudy. So I think we're probably going to be looking at a 7 to 8 minute exposure. That's what we'll do for our test. Watch out for the edges of glass or any cast shadows. That's going to alter the way your end result exposes. Even the edge of this negative will leave a little bit of a line. Be mindful of it and use it in your composition. You want to move from the sun inside as quickly as possible and then get this underwater also as quickly as possible. I'm using cold water from the sink to rinse, and I almost immediately get my print to start to show. You want to get the entirety of the thing wet as quickly as possible because water is essentially stopping the development process. So if you're only rinsing half of it out and then you go to the other half, you may have a darker spot in one area to the other. Keep rinsing. You can also do this in a tub of water with a cap full of peroxide. The peroxide will make your blues darken faster so you can see ultimately what your print is going to oxidize to. The rinsing process does take some time. If you're using a larger piece, you may want to use a tub or a big bucket in order to rinse. Make sure that all of the solution is free from the paper or fabric. That means the water is running clear and you're not getting any little kind of lime green looking water that's seeping out. Paper is more dense and takes more time to rinse. Fabric, on the other hand, takes a little more wear and tear, so you can kind of rough it around a little bit. The paper, you want to be more delicate. You want to avoid getting a crease in your paper, and you don't want to scuff it up. So be gentle with it. Take some time and get a good rinse. If your blues are super light, you didn't leave it in the sun long enough. If everything is super dark and you're not getting any white spots, then you left it in too long. Cyanotypes are best if you can err on the side of overexposure. I think our 7-minute print was just perfect. Now that we know how incredibly simple it is to make a cyanotype, let's take a look at what happened and ways to get creative with it. If you just put an object on your cyanotype, areas that wash out completely to white are where the object has touched the paper or fabric or whatever substrate you're using during exposure. These have been completely blocked away from the UV or the sun. Areas that are super dark blue are areas that have had full contact and gotten full exposure. These in-between areas are areas that were in shadow. So areas that have not as much exposure give you a variant. And what's cool about this is it gives you kind of a three-dimensional effect. It looks a little bit like an X-ray, and you can kind of play around with that effect. In this piece, you can see where I have fully blocked out areas using pieces of cut cardboard, and I have a three-dimensional print from a three-dimensional object in this case. These little dudes were on here, and there were also a stencil. Now you notice the stencil is not as dark as this, and that's because the stencil that I used at the time was a little translucent, so some light came through and some of the print stayed and some of it didn't. So I've got this in between. Also, you can develop photographs with cyanotype. That's right, all you need is a negative, and then you'll have a full print of a photo of a person that you've taken, or even a photograph of your artwork. So you can do some pretty cool stuff with this. I like to use Jacquard Products negative generator. It's a little program on their website where you pop your photo in, you click a button, and it flips it into a negative. And from there you can kind of toggle around on how dark or light areas are. I also like to use their solarfast film for printing. It's made to go through your printer, and then you have a nice big negative. You can also, in the program, make your negatives big by tiling your image. Let's take a look at combining all the things that we've talked about so far. Here's a cyanotype where I've combined a stencil, a negative, a three-dimensional object, and also some washers and some cardboard like we mentioned before to block out. This is the way the print was set up when I made it. I can remove the stencil, object, and negative so you can see what the finished result is. Here's another combination where I have a stencil on the top. This is a negative that I actually cut out. And here I laid physically a real dandelion that I then picked off the little seeds and put those and placed them so it looks like I'm blowing a dandelion. I mentioned before all cyanotypes are blue, and that's true. The print is blue. But what if you print on a surface that's not white to start with? Well, then you're going to get a visual mixture between the blue and whatever your undercolor is. If you're using the two-part solution where you treat paper, fabric, or whatever to print, then you've got a little more flexibility on what color your substrate is. Pre-treated fabrics and papers are always white. That's not to say those can't be painted after you've printed them. Yeah, that's another thing you could do. Here, I took a silk scarf that was dyed yellow. I then treated the scarf with the cyanotype solution, let that dry in a dark place, and brought it out into the sun for development. This scarf has such dimension, and I love how the yellow and blue have come together to make this really beautiful green scarf. Cyanotypes are one-sided, so this is the side that I printed, this is the side that I did not. Cyanotypes don't have to be small either. They can be as big as you want to print them. As with all art, in fact it's why this channel exists, there are infinite ways to alter how you get a print with cyanotypes. I hope this gave you a good springboard and jumpstart. If it did, boop that like button, and I'll see you next time for a new Art Mint.